Hey guys. So I would like to cover sounds today. It sounds like a pretty simple item to really cover, although there's a few different things with sounds. So if you pull up your main grid here or your main menu in build mode, under the little builder section here, the first little tab, you're going to find sounds. And there's three different sounds. Well, technically, there's four different sounds. If you go to Gizmos, there's actually a sound recorder. And then under sounds, you have sound effects. So I'm just going to click this cute alien angry sound. You have background sound. I'm going to click quiet park. And then you also have music. And so music's really nice when you have it set and let me stop all these sounds here. And we'll go over some of these controls here in just a moment. So you'll notice all of them are shown differently. They're kind of labeled differently with different pictures. So the first one here is our sound recorder. This is pretty cool because you can record anything you want. You have a play button and a record button. This record button, none of the other ones will have. And we can click this, and now we can record our message however we want to go ahead and set it and stop. Processes it, and now we can record our message however we want to go ahead and set it, and we can turn up the volume like this, and now we can record our message however we want to go ahead. We can turn down the volume, and now we can record our message. It's very quiet. You can set it on loop, which means once it starts playing, it's going to keep playing over and over and over, or you can shut the loop off. Play on start means as soon as you start the world, is it going to play? And now we can, or is it going to be off by default? And then global tells us whether or not, if I turn it on, global means everybody in the world is going to be able to hear this. If I turn it off, it means you're going to only be able to hear it if you're within a distance of 1 unit. So let's say you walk in through a door and you want this to play for the person who walked through the door, you might set this for 15. That way everybody who's close to that door may be able to hear it, but anybody who's on another side of the map or in another room won't be able to hear this sound. And then as far as attributes, it's just telling you the position, scale, and so on of this particular sound object. And that's sound recorder. The other sounds are sound itself. So this is going to be that cute, angry alien. As you can see, there's no record button here because it's a predefined sound. One of the things that you notice as well that I didn't go over under sound recorder is pitch. So this, and now we can record. I have a regular voice there. If I turn the pitch up, it'll get squeaky, and it speeds it up. If I turn it down, and let's turn it to, let's say, 0.75. This, and now we can record our message however we want to go ahead. And so the pitch is just going to speed it up or slow it down, and then it also changes it whether it's a high pitch or a low pitch. And that goes for all of these objects. So if I want it to be up here, it sounds like a little rat. If I turn it down, sounds like an evil cat. Minimum distance and maximum distance. So this tells us how close we have to be in order for us to hear this object. So if you want minimum distance, for instance, to be up to 10, anybody right next to the object won't be able to hear it, but everybody over that amount would be able to hear it, and anybody under this amount would be able to hear it. That way, let's say if you grabbed a coin, for instance, and you want all the other players to know somebody grabbed that coin, but you don't want to play the sound for the person who picked up the coin, you would set minimum distance to a higher amount for that player, and then maximum distance you could turn to 1,000, however much you wanted. I believe 100 is actually the max amount of distance that you can choose in one of these. Global, again, is just going to say, can everybody in the world hear it, or just everybody within this distance? Volume, obviously, is volume, and then play on start is wow! No. One of the things that you're going to notice on this one here is that you don't have the option to loop the sound. So sound effects, you have to have something that's going to cause that sound to happen. And then you have our world sound or our ambient sound. These are just going to be the sounds. If you hear it, the low little rumbling sound, it's just so you don't have a dead world. It gives you a little bit of something, some realism to it. And then again, no record, you have a stop and play. Usually on these sounds, you're going to go ahead and play on start because you just want it to be playing in the background, nothing really special. Volume, you can play as loud as you want depending on the sound. You might not want it too loud because then it takes away from the world. That's all you can hear and you just want it to stop. Global, maximum distance, minimum distance. So that's your ambient sounds. And then your music, and you're going to notice the ambient sound has pitch, but music does not have pitch. So all of these are going to have pitch, so you can make it sound higher or lower, but the music is only a predefined sound effect that you cannot make faster or slower. You can turn up the volume, you can play it on start, global, maximum, minimum, but you start losing a few of those attributes there. So that's going to be the difference between all of those. The other thing that I was asked is how do you wire them? How do you get them to actually work? And so I'm going to use a special script today. It's going to be a little different than what we are used to as far as triggers, just because I don't want to make a different trigger for each one of these. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is set it up so that when index trigger is pressed and when index trigger is released, when button 1 is pressed and when button 1 is released, and when button 2 is pressed and when button 2 is released. So think about these as far as 3 different triggers. So when you enter the trigger, exit the trigger. When you enter the trigger, exit the trigger, and enter the trigger and exit the trigger. So when I push my button 1 down, it's entering the trigger. When I let go of it, it exits the trigger. This is just going to allow me to set up 3 different items on one block so I don't have to recode it several times. And then what you can go ahead and do is you're going to give them each a different name. So my recording I'm not going to use in this tutorial. I'm just going to use the sound effect of this cute little alien here. And let's turn his back. There we go. So what we can go ahead and do is over in variable, we're going to go down to object, and we're going to give the first object a name. So I'm going to call it alien. The second sound is our ambient sound, which is the park. So I'm going to call this one park. And then our third sound is our music. So I'm just going to go ahead and create an object called music. And so now what we can go ahead and do is I can go to actions, and there's 3 different things that you can do with the sound. You can play the sound, you can pause the sound, and you can stop the sound. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play on trigger and stop when I let go of the trigger. I'm going to play our ambient sound and stop our ambient sound on button 1. And then our music, I'm going to act a little differently with it. So I'm going to play sound, but then I'm going to pause sound when I let button 2 go. And here's what the difference between these are. So our alien, our park, and our music. And this is called script 10, so I'm just going to go down to this little block here, name it script 10. And so again, we're going to go over this trigger button 1, button 2 in a separate video, but think of this as entering and exit one trigger, entering and exiting a second trigger, entering and exiting a third trigger. So these are three separate triggers. The first trigger, I would attach alien to our alien sound. Let me pull this up here. There we are. So alien to our alien sound. Park to our park sound. And music to our music sound. So what it would be is now that this is wired, and again, think of it as a trigger there. Now that our trigger is wired to that sound, for instance, our alien, let me find my block. If I go into that trigger, you're going to hear the sound. If I go into the trigger and then pull out of the trigger halfway, the sound cuts off early. It doesn't go all the way through the sound effects, such as if I hold it in. So that's what that stop sound does. And we can do the same thing with our music as well, or our ambient sound. You hear the ambient sound, and if I pull out of the trigger, the ambient sound goes away. There's the park sound, and the park sound goes away. So that is starting and stopping audio. Now, there's a third item though, is pause audio. If you stop a sound, for instance, this alien sound, if I stop it halfway, when I go into it again, it's going to start at the beginning. But with music or with the pause function, what I could do is start a song and pause it. And so when I come back to it, it's going to keep playing from where I stopped it. So those are the three different parts of a script that you can do as far as manipulating sounds. It's going to be again under this little magic wand. You go down to the bottom and it's going to be under sound, play sound, pause sound, or stop sound. You put an event to cause that sound to happen, and then you have to create a variable for that sound, name it whatever you want, and then drag that variable to that action. So when this action happens, we want to play sound, and what sound do we want to play? Alien. Then when we go to our object, whether it's the trigger or whatever it is, inside of that, as far as the scripting for, or not the scripting, but the attributes for the trigger that we are going to set it on, we're going to find that variable, and then we're going to drag that variable from this object that's going to be triggering the sound to the sound itself, and it's going to go to the reference bar. And that is all four types of sounds, as well as how to activate and how to stop them. Thank you very much for watching. I do appreciate you guys very much. And if you can do me a favor, go ahead and like and subscribe if you want to see more videos. And feel free to comment down below with things you liked or things that you would suggest me doing in another video.